Hello, everyone. Thankful Thursday. Lots to be grateful for. I am going to just hold some space while we welcome those of you that are going to join us live onto our broadcast. And I'm so glad to see the viewer number as it just keeps kind of clicking up. It's always fun to watch. So I am imagining that number one is always Ellie coming on. But as you all join for our kind of routine Thursday, thanks for the heart. I always love that first heart. Our routine Thursday conversation. And again, knowing some of you might be new because lots of people are doing me a favor and spreading the word and sharing the Facebook Lives and the podcasts and the Instagram accounts. You guys are sharing it in a lot of places. And I really appreciate that. And so we're seeing not only are the numbers really strong when we do the Facebook Lives, but the numbers of who watches afterwards are really strong. And so I really appreciate you all sharing that with us. So it is Thankful Thursday. So a great way to start off just to say hi is put something in the comments that you are thankful for. And don't pick the easy stuff. Pick the surprising stuff or the meaningful stuff. You know, we all, if we have shelter, because many don't, when we say shelter in place, like if we have shelter, don't pick the easy stuff. Pick something you've grown in gratitude for. So Jaren's on. Hi, Jaren and Angela Rose. So glad to do these. People are thanking me for doing them, and it is my pleasure. It is for me finding a way to help, but it also for me is some practice on what works well to interact with you, because right now we are planning a pretty cool event. It's the combination between a course and coaching based on Zoom or another platform, much like this, where we continue weekly kind of group coaching that we start up as a group and we stay in the same group. And I can launch many of those. But so it's given me a lot of practice about how this works, how to interact, how I can make it engaging and all that good stuff. So for those of you that are joining, we're holding some space to get people on. I just want you to put up what you're thankful for, and don't pick the easy, obvious stuff. Pick something that is something that includes, a true gratitude. It's easy to be grateful for the stuff we like, but contemplation, which is even bigger than self-reflection, contemplation would have us gain in gratitude for it all. When we can start to go beyond ourselves and believe that the universe has our back and that things happen in our favor, and that maybe our perspective is so limited to the present or so colluded by the ego. A lot of times the ego stays in this band of polarity where things are good or bad. And the problem with that is the very same thing that pleased you will leave you at some point. So if you were really attached to it being good, and that's all you were grateful for, your whole well-being and your gratitude is based on external events. But if you can contemplate internal gratitude, which is a different practice. It's not just listing the things you like in life that are going well, or the things that are pleasing to your judgmental little self, or the things that you prefer. True gratitude is when you can look at all of it and say, I'm willing. I can find a way to welcome this, and gaining that perspective that, the love of your life, at some point you'll have to say goodbye, like you pass or they pass, like everything that pleases you, the very thing that's bringing you joy, buried in that, wrapped into that is the seeds of your next grieving, right? Because when we're on that polarity where things are good or bad, or you know depressing or joyful, whatever it is for you, if it's external, and if your gratitude is based on, well, a lot of people are asking people to do today, it's Thankful Thursday, gratitude's a topic. They're asking people to kind of list things they're grateful for. And what I really look at is, you can tell the folks that are into some contemplation because they're finding ways to be grateful for things they haven't welcomed in the past. So they're finding some of the people maybe that were their biggest challenges, their biggest teacher. They're finding ways that they're noticing maybe as some states are calling people back to work if they weren't already on the front lines, like people are noticing their anxiety. And some people are saying, I'm grateful for the increased anxiety because it's telling me I'm about to return to something that I'm not okay with, and I need to pay attention to that and set different boundaries, or whatever it might be. So let's read through some of these as we get started. You guys are good at this. So many cool people. Deandra's here from Olympia, Washington. Chris says, I have a good job allowing me to work from home. You guys are looking through this awesome patient team, super healthy family dynamics. How fantastic to use this time together to just really be able to be with people and not have to fix people, not to tolerate poor behavior, but to allow space, more space probably in a closed space. You need to offer mental space for people to work through their stuff. Just because you're physically close doesn't mean you have to emotionally suffocate. It doesn't mean when somebody has anxiety that you need to take on that energy. It's given us a lot of practice, I think, in how to be in this world and not of this world is something I walk with a lot. Like, how can I move through this world not over dependent on what's happening for my inner peace or my inner contentment, or not let what has happened maybe in the last few days in our relationship influence our relationship. Like, the ability to create space, and this doesn't mean to tolerate. That's where we go over the line. We become tolerant of some things that we probably should instead start practicing expressing maybe some boundaries. But there's just so much here to be grateful for, and gratitude, like I said on another podcast, it's not over grateful for this pandemic and ignoring all the people that have been affected and people who have lost loved ones, people who had to work through that with compromised immune systems, people that had far less in financial reserves than some of us. We're not grateful for the event, but so I can't say I'm grateful for what happened, but I can be grateful in every moment. And there's something very different about that. One is a judgment. Even if you say things like, I feel hopeless, it's like that's a judgment on how the situation will come out. The feeling maybe is fear, or if you can't identify your feelings, if you struggle, just go to the basics: mad, glad, sad, or scared, or some combination of all of those. So fantastic. Jaron, thankful for organizations that, when faced with having to help people transition out of the organization, they do that with compassion and grace and generosity. And I'm seeing some wonderful resources out there helping us pay attention to, if you have to offboard some people from your organization, how do you do that with empathy and compassion? And folks, let's face it, how do you keep those relationships alive? The relationships need to go bigger or beyond that, because for you leaders that tell me good talent is hard to find, is even if they aren't working for you currently, are you still mentoring them? Are you willing to keep track of them? Are you willing to do some check-ins so that when times change, instead of you having to go back to the old ways to recruit and go find somebody, do you have a whole menu of relationships you've kept track of that you can go back and tap into that great talent who now has a whole nother experience that they can bring to the table? So that is exciting. So, oh my gosh, somebody sitting on their deck in the sun, not Mexico. Oh, it's Shelley from Maryland. I'm glad you guys have sun out there. Not be mired in fear. These are great ones, you guys. I'm so looking forward to each week. You're welcome. Schlotzsky's today. Absolutely. Everybody needs a good Schlotzsky's deli sandwich. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Oh, the medallion I have on. I wish I knew the artist. I got it in the Minneapolis airport. It's a Liberty dollar. And so I loved it because got it about a year ago where I'm like, I'm going to focus on my word for the year was freedom and liberation. I'm going to liberate myself from some limiting beliefs, from some habits that weren't serving me well. And so it's really symbolic to me too. So thanks for putting that out there. Thankful for friends who've given authentic feedback about where people can, where you can develop and improve. Thankful for challenges, big opportunities for collaboration and change and evaluation. You guys are, you're my people. You're my people. Even though you've not had it easy, it's like you are mining this experience for learning. And accountability has those four stages. Commitment, I'm going to go all into this thing instead of just surviving it or living through it. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to see what quarantine has to teach me. That's the first stage of accountability, is the willingness to agree to what's in front of you, to say yes instead of arguing with the circumstances, the ability to say, I accept, I will be with this, I will, practice what this brings me. So first step in accountability is commitment. I'm all in. Second step is resilience, right? You guys have done great at resilience, staying the course in spite of barriers. The third step is ownership, that when we do see and notice something about ourselves or others, or something that we are participating in life, allowing or enabling, that we meet it with compassion, but we own it, because what you can't own, you can't change. And the fourth piece is continuous learning. So I don't want to pass any judgment on how people have gone through this. It's not a test to pass, but you can practice the reality-based accountability model through this, the four factors. Are you all in? Do you find yourself resorting back to just surviving, being the victim, where it's like, well, I'm waiting for them to do it for me, or I'm on the sidelines watching and critiquing and judging? No, or buy-in's a verb. Can you just go, you know what, it is what it is, and I'm going to really radically accept this reality? So commitment. Resilience is staying the course, not overcoming, not never sleeping, not expending yourself to get everybody through. Resilience is healthy. It's staying the course in spite of barriers. And that is about commitment and dedication, as I've talked about on these podcasts, not heroics and perseverance, because that is not resilience. It's not sustainable. Resilience reveals to us the habits we've had. And I always say, this is why we practice, because when you need it, it's already established. So resilience isn't about brute strength and heroics and diving catches. Resilience, as I've said, is about connection and being able to ask for help and being able to be vulnerable. So it's really revealing to us your commitment, your resilience, your ownership, really getting to know yourself and the dark sides. What have you been avoiding from all that busyness? And then the continuous learning. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's a key topic today. And for those of you, my next question, by the way, is what do you want help with? And what questions do you have? Or what topics do you want to hear more about, as I kind of continue the list? But my worry is, I watched, I guess it's not a worry, people can do what they want to do, but as I watched us say, you know what, we're kind of starting to call people back and think about whether it's going to be June or maybe at the end of the summer or whatever you're thinking about, that people are, this is a time where you can really abandon what you've learned and what you've owned, and you can get pressured back into things that didn't work for you and didn't work for others. So as we're thinking about going back to work, I want you guys to get really conscious on whether that normal is what you want to go back to, not your jobs, not, but if you're curating a life, if you're really taking what you learned and making sure that you're affecting as much as possible, that you're designing, actively designing going forward your life. So, okay, there's so many. I'm hoping you guys are reading through these comments. Thankful that your daughter's home. I love that. Gifts from the season, more intentional about reaching out and being to friends and family. Getting time to practice asking for what we need. You guys, these are all amazing. A company that kept us paid the entire time and has pushed uncomfortable boundaries. people are grateful for, we want to go easy on people. And a lot of people think accountability, should I really be holding my people accountable at this time? And that's why I talked about the stages of the crisis, is because in the beginning, if people are just worried about safety and basics, help them. But after that, after we've kind of made things work and we've connected people and we have them safe, and we've helped those who had less reserves than some of us or less privilege, like once we stabilize the situation, great leaders use this time to stretch people. And you can be empathetic and call people to greatness and not let people kind of off the hook and still have expectations and tough conversations, with compassion. So I love that you guys see this as an hour of sanity and people have found strengths in themselves to move forward in a positive direction. Um, oh, awesome. Cheyenne's out there helping people get SBA funds. That's fantastic to help with all of that. The pandemic's created a platform to shine light on mental health realities. How true. And I need to apologize because my background's mental health. And when we talk about essential workers, we talk about everybody from delivery to grocery to our beloved nurses, our beloved physicians. But who has been on full time, many without pay, but many on Zoom, still trying to help clients through this, are therapists, all of your mental health professionals. And people are still manning suicide hotlines and domestic violence hotlines, and they're getting creative and innovative how to help people through all the challenges that they have. And this time has revealed to some folks that perhaps their mental health isn't in the balance they want it to be. So online courses, and that's in the new course I'm going to do in some coaching, we're going to talk a lot about the personal side of this and habits and resilience and ways of personally reframing. It's going to be more personal. It's going to be based on the new book coming out and really answering kind of those questions on, everybody says, I love this stuff. Like, how do you live it on a daily basis? And that's what, I've gotten practice in teaching. It's from the past, but thank God for those mental health professionals that we don't name very much. So, yeah, Melissa is saying now is the time to reinvent, remembering how much we didn't like, but maybe our busyness or our being okay kept us from seeing the true effect of other people not being okay. So, love that Deandra's saying people have gone deeper and that the company has detailed training for employees, and excited to see where it goes. Everybody's kind of in a different space, and everybody's coming out of a different space because, well, some of us have had the opportunity to do some reflection. And there's some people who have just been working 12-hour shifts, and so there's another wave of this that not only will it be a lot about mental health, but where some of us, I'm not saying we've had vacation, but some of us have gotten some retreat and respite, or at least permission to go down to the basics. We've got a whole nother part of our workforce that will come off of this in a pretty exhausted shape. And so I'm thinking about, especially healthcare folks, how can we rebuild and restore? Because I don't think it's going to be enough to just help them rest and rebalance. Like, I think it's going to be more like the reconciliation process for some of us that we had to go through, like in South Africa with some of the apartheid, are still going through, because we did put some employees in horrendous positions and at great cost. And so, it's like how to think through all of that. So I'm going to read if you guys have some good questions, and I'll get started. Chris is supporting teachers that have been called to greatness and redesigned instruction on the fly. And I love that, hoping the practices that we've invented will be carried forward. And again, the last stage of really being impacted rather than just traumatized, like coming through this as evolved as possible, is in these moments right now to not just get caught back up in the familiar and the busy, but to really curate. your learnings and the things you've gained in skills and abilities and approaches to really curate that to make sure that we don't return back to something that wasn't working in the first place or certainly won't work in kind of our new world. Um, yeah, a lot of us have gotten in touch with our purpose and why we do what we do. Great teams. Can you unpack calling people to greatness while showing empathy? Need to accelerate innovation and being responsive in the pandemic demands. Great question. Elizabeth brought that up. So let's talk about that. Let's take that one and start out with. So in the beginning of all of this, and potentially at any phase, like if one of your employees, has now a sick member of their family at any phase, the first thing we do as leaders is respond to people's basic needs. Basics are important, and safety. And so anytime that changes for your people, it's like, what do you need right now and what's happening? And you attend to that, but it's shared accountability. It's like, okay, here's where I can connect you, and here's some ideas I have, and here's how I can, adjust for you to get that in place. But here's a shared accountability. That's the temporary accommodation I'm making for you. And then you contract, like, how many days, or can you come back with a plan on how you're going to have a more sustainable way to rectify that situation? So we aren't just accepting people's circumstances as the reasons they can't succeed. We are temporarily saying, I see you, I recognize you, I'm empathetic, and let's make this temporary. You need basics. You're trying to do it alone. Can I connect you in? Can we have you connect with a team member who's in a similar situation, who has some best practices that they've discovered? But the very next stage after getting you connected and getting you safe is, I've got to really identify what the priorities are and what your non-negotiables are. Even in this time, here are the basics that I need. We've got to make it work, and we can't let some of our customer needs go or patient needs. And so that is the, like, get stuff done, just fix it. When that's done, and most people then need that call to greatness, where the next stage is like radically simplify, be intentional, don't add things back in that don't have ROI, don't just have temporary solutions, start to look longer term, how you're going to make this work, and the whole innovation piece. And then finally, how do you curate this so that we are better off going forward, as better off as we can be? So what happens a lot of times is people think empathy is mutually exclusive or calling people to greatness. And in fact, they are a marriage. Empathy is, I see you, I hear you, I'm present for you. And empathy is more about what you sometimes don't do rather than what you do, because empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy goes into, and I am going to reinforce in you the victim mindset, because I'm going to agree with you, this is awful, and we're the victims, there's something we can do, and I don't get anything done either, and it's like, I don't know how they expect us to be productive, and we start to collude together and agree with one another that we can't be successful because of our circumstances. Empathy is just, I see you, and given our current reality and the expectations, let's focus on how we could. And great leaders can do this empathy accountability thing by continuing to manage energy away from why we can't to how we could. And one of my favorite words in that is given. Given that we don't have that today, how can we? Well, we just can't. Well, given that you have kids at home and have additional demands on your time, how can you have response time that's within 4 hours? Given that. And so, what a lot of people do is they want to cite their circumstances as the reasons they can't succeed. And our job as leaders is to tend to the person. So if they go back and they go, you don't understand, I'm completely overwhelmed, then let's back up. Let's talk about a plan for you to, given that you have this level of anxiety, then what's your plan to find relief for that? Like, are you reaching out? Have you found, someone on Zoom? Like, what are you doing for your self-care? There's nothing anyone brings up that they can say, therefore I can't, unless it's totally out of the ordinary, a death and you guys can use that discernment, but now is the time to start saying, this is how you develop resilience, is in the moment you learn to trust yourself that we can and that you have part in that. And so I do a lot of like, what's your plan? Or why don't we talk tomorrow? You come back to me with a plan on how you can make this work. And if the plan is, I'll try harder, that's not a plan I can invest in. If the plan is, um, I'll just survive. If the plan doesn't seem like it is going to increase the capability of the person, don't invest in the plan. Just say, you know what, that's hope as a strategy, or that's, I want something you really can have agency on. Like, what's your part in this? It's like, well, I have a partner who doesn't help out, and so I can't do this because of them. It's like, what's your part in this? And what have you learned about yourself communicating what you need? And I can't get involved in your personal lives, but I need you to come up with a plan on how to do that. And the piece of this is have flexibility on the non-negotiables. So part of prioritizing is, here are the non-negotiables that you have to deliver. How you get that done, as long as it matches our values and it's behavior we would condone, how you get that done, that's where I can give you flexibility, right? But these are the non-negotiables, and it's time. It's a little challenging, but it's going to be time where if you coddle the people through this, you will just have less ready people for the next piece. You're not doing yourself any favors by saving somebody through this. The best motivator, the best thing someone can do is have a direct relationship with their reality, and you not interfere in it or enable it. And that's why for some people, sending them home, that direct relationship with the reality is so scary. If it's a child that is now at home with somebody that's abusive, like, that's the end of the spectrum. But for most of us, we got to just kind of sit in the life we've created for a while. And if it's like chaotic and we haven't had boundaries and we don't do things that are self-care and we just do self-soothing and we are on 24/7 and we take care, we do too much for other people, wow, all of that got revealed. It's like, go home and sit with your current situation. Um, how much we had skipped becoming technologically savvy, how much we had skipped like developing communication skills. I've even saw it revealed how lazy people have been about their own engagement. They're like, well, we really just don't have any meetings. And so I just haven't really talked to any of my colleagues. I'm like, well, that's your engagement. Like, why haven't you reached out or created that for yourself? Like, people are like, well, we had cappuccino at work and my employer hasn't really sent that to my house. It like reveals to you how over dependent you are on other folks, how much you allow your life to be decided by not what you want to do, but what other people are calling in from you. Like, that's what's so important. So don't waste this time as far as calling people up to greatness. And the empathy is, I care about you, and how could you be even better? How could you have adopt skill sets that grow in this? And what I would tell you is that whenever people are in pain and they're my employees or my colleagues, I start with three areas. Skill set. Their suffering may be caused by a skill set issue. So are they trying to use an old skill set for a new reality? A lot of us got exposed that way. People are like, what do you mean we have to do Zoom meetings? It's like, I had some people, even though it was dangerous, they're like, I just want to go back in the office. Can't we just get together for a meeting? I'm like, you can on Zoom, not my team, but people have coaching. So it's like, is it a skill set? And if it's a skill set, whatever's gotten revealed about your people's technical savviness, about their diversity and their inclusion and their view of the world and their understanding that not all of us are having the same experience and that we are more connected than we thought. And somebody else's lack of justice should be all of our lack of justice. Like, that should be skill set. The next piece is approach. because skill set is something I can put you through a course for. So check skill set. The second one's approach. The third one's willingness. Approach has more to do with like the boundaries, the communication skills, the vulnerability, the asking for help, the emotional expensiveness, the way we move through life. Like if I do everything and then get exhausted and then rage at the people around me as a martyr and feel put upon by my environment and I don't have any choices. That's more the approach part of it. We have some really highly skilled people that overfunction, see themselves as martyrs and kind of abuse the rest of us, right? That's the approach part. Am I using a less than modern approach for these times or a less than evolved approach for these times, right? And then the third one is willingness. What's the person's willingness? Like, are they arguing with reality? Are they just not they just aren't buying in like by choice. They're resisting because they don't want to be revealed as being unskilled, or they don't want to change a familiar approach that feels uncomfortable and scary and has a lot to do with, instead of just going towards the familiar and all the, even if it's dysfunctional, it's familiar. That's so important. So for all of us, that's a great question to work with your teams. Like, what skill set did you find yourself lacking in? What approaches to life in general do you need to change? And, what's your level of willingness right now? And those can all be questions for self-reflection. So feedback doesn't work very well, especially when people are stressed, because it hits the ego. So instead of feedback, I just state non-negotiables. Instead of me commenting on how you're dealing with this, that's I just skip that and go to, here's what we need as an organization. And then I invite self-reflection. So I just ask those questions like, do you find yourself underskilled to be able to work in this new environment? Because one question we're asking people on our accountability surveys, we're adjusting the engagement surveys that filter on accountability. I've changed some of those answers. We also came up with a quote resiliency survey, and I'll be coming out with a whole course on resiliency online. But what we found out is we ask people, my productivity remains the same independent from my environment. And that's a big question. Like, some people are more productive at home. They're like, Sai, I get so much done at home. What does that tell you about your boundaries at work? What does that tell you about meetings you accept rather than, decline or delegate, or, what does that tell you, right? And so it's really helping people understand for themselves what skill set or what have you changed in your approach. And sometimes, bizarrely enough, a change in approach is more tolerance or lowering of standards and things I have not seen as value add. Like, I actually got intentional and conscious. So I worked with one company that they were still requiring quarterly updates to the executive team that was all about whether the PowerPoint had no misspellings and nobody could challenge it. And so people were doing all this work and they're like, well, what's the value of that? Don't we really just need to update people on these key metrics? What do they actually need? And it completely took a formal update they've been doing for probably 50 years and made it into, casual dress on the couch, talking about real issues. And what they found by changing their approach is that they really uncovered very quickly what the issues were. People would present data and the execs would be the only ones processing it. And now it's like they're getting much more processed work. Like, they're saying, if you can in one sentence tell me what you think the next issue is we should be addressing. So, and then that willingness piece, because there are a lot of folks right now that have low willingness and they're like, okay, that was okay. I got through it. Let's get back to normal. That willingness piece is a big deal right now, because a willing person has good habits. They have cultivated a relationship with uncertainty. They've cultivated the ability to be still and to be in an environment or circumstances and be unaffected by that. Like, this is really revealing when I look at people's like lack of willingness. It's really revealing some adulting, some maturing, some evolving chapters of evolution that we've skipped for some folks, which is, everything from some grit to we can do hard stuff to, um, the ability to be still and the ability to, when needed, read a good book or sit quietly or not know the future. Those actually are competencies that come from contemplation, but most of us have overdeveloped on the side of um, productivity and underdeveloped on the side of making sure that I'm the vessel by which inspiration can come through, and that productivity is like this small part of the entire spectrum. And so I want people noticing your energy as you are noticing. I've got some things that I have the ability to look at just my energy. What depletes my energy? What brings me energy? So, what type of work depletes my energy? And is it just the hard part to, venture through? Or is it something that I have continually said yes to that I just need to take off my list of my life list? Like, I'm not, what do I hate doing? What do I never want to do? What brings me energy? What's my energy like during a day? And, how tuned in am I to like my circadian rhythms, and how am I really able to manage my energy? So when I'm low in energy, it could be as simple as drink more water, get up and, um, jump in place for 30 seconds. Like, how am I doing at managing my energy, curating my life, choosing what I want to participate in and allow? Because a year from now, for most of us, that life that you'll be tempted to complain about a year from now will be the one you intentionally created. Talk about full agency, full accountability. If you are just going back to the victim stance and I've got to do this because I, need the cash or whatever without a plan to make that difference, the life a year from now that you might complain about is going to be the one you had a big opportunity to choose. And so I've always believed that a lot of our life, we have more to do with what it is than we claim, but this is really going to be the case. People are learning healthier ways to deal with anxiety and perfect, perfect. I've got a couple of cool questions I want to unpack for us too. Ellie sent some that had been sent in. So I hope this one isn't dated, but I think it will allow us to um, apply it as we're bringing people back to work. So um, this person said, I'm a nursing administrator for a critical access hospital emergency department. So those of you not in healthcare, critical access means small, rural, probably wouldn't be open if there hadn't been some federal programming to help with like building updates and different reimbursements and stuff. So we're really in danger right now, folks, of losing what those of us in healthcare call access to, instead of having to do 2 hours for a sore throat or having a general practice person in your community. We have fought really hard, especially in the urban and areas where social economically they don't have the dollars at their disposal. We have fought in healthcare really hard to keep at least access available to those folks. So that's what that means. As fear is mounting with regard to COVID-19, I worry that my nurses will vacate their role when they're most needed. We've been proactive in our preparations, and I've been trying to reassure them every day. I would like some help with my communication. Do you have a suggestion for helping me quell their fears while simultaneously calling them into battle? So I apologize if we got to this late. I've done some things on that, but I think it's for all of you because any of you helping people return back to work, they're going to be going through the same anxiety that the nurses have been going through this whole time, and everybody else, the environmental services folks in healthcare, their cleaning rooms, and so you have to work these situations as a group and as individuals, okay, simultaneously. So, as a group, what a great leader does is just name the elephant in the room. My fear is that many or some of you, while you're, and give people benefit of the doubt, while your hearts are big and your intentions are great, you may, when this gets going from your own anxiety or worry about family, just when we need you the most, may be the time that you decide individually to step down and not be part of the collective kind of solution. So I would just put it out there. I would give people benefit of the doubt. These aren't bad people that you'll abandon ship. It's an acknowledgement that everybody in this room has thought these thoughts and they are considering, do I stay or do I go? And what I'm here as a leader to tell you is we have about 1,000 more options, right? So people are like, do I want to be safe? I should stay home, or do I want to be unsafe and come in? When people are scared, and that's the polarity I was talking about at the beginning of this, they get into either or. And as a leader, we have to introduce perspective and this big word called and. And so if your concern is staying safe, how can we stay safe and, work in the ED with cases that as they come in, we not only don't know what is wrong with that person, but we have a responsibility to quickly separate out the non-COVID from COVID. And sometimes the person making that decision, I mean, that's just pure triage stuff, right? So first, with a group, the transparent, speak the obvious, non-judgmental, normalize it. Go, I would be a little worried about some of you who were just rushing into this with no concern about yourself, because I want you concerned about yourself. So find a way to come to them, name it, neutral, benefit of the doubt, normalize it, and just say, let's do a good negative brainstorming. It's a tool we teach in the No Ego book. Let's do a negative brainstorming. Everybody, we're going to take 15 minutes and get super negative. You're free. We aren't going to call it BMW driving. Tell me, we're going to go around. We're going to give everybody a chance to talk. One sentence, go, no story, just one sentence. We're going to go around. If you can't think of something, we'll come back. Nobody critique each other's idea. What's your main concern? And you just write it up there. What's your main concern? Write it up there. What hasn't been covered yet? What do you want to add to the list? Be careful that people aren't going into the future, aren't imagining, aren't stories, but just what is your concern? And you put it up there. And I label those right in front of people visually, concerns, right? I cross it out and I put the word risk in. So thank you for identifying risk. Now let's go back and let's add some uh, let's take away the fear and add some logic or some analysis to this thinking. So let's take a look at this fear and let's look at it. How probable is it? Because sometimes we fear things that may never happen. High, medium, or low. And I just go through each one and we just ballpark these. Don't get bogged down in if people can't agree that it's low, then it's at least medium or high. It doesn't matter. Put it up there. What you're starting to show people in front of them beyond the ego, outside the ego, so the ego can't twist it, you're showing them that some things we fear aren't that probable. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be worried about them. We do the next step. So what would be the impact if this did happen? Because some things aren't probable, but the impact is so high that we still need to worry about them. And so now we look at impact. Some of the things we're really concerned about don't have that big of impact, right? And then now that we look at what we have in our environment, where can we bring our agency to this? Where can we bring our effect? So rather than just this is our environment and therefore we're victims, given this is what we need, and I really need you at work, given that, what are ideas that you have that we can do as individuals or a team? Because otherwise it comes up with all the things for other people to do. And if you can't get there, bring out thinking inside the box, another tool. Like these are the tools to be practicing during this time. And it's like, think about risk. Is that an acceptable risk, right? We have risk all the time. Is that an acceptable risk? Is that a risk that can be mitigated? Is that a risk that can be avoided or transferred? And how can we, mitigate that risk up to and including, even though we're not completely certain about antibodies, some people are changing the way they're staffing and they're using their people with antibodies or who have recovered on these front lines to do some of this, triaging. And so they're putting some people in, more risk, although less risk than others. It's like innovation comes from the absence of drama. And when people are individually whispering in the corners about their biggest fear, that's all drama. So the tools bring it out beyond the ego, where it's just our reality. And let's have agency and work through this reality. And so now, given the things we're able to mitigate and the things that I need to go secure for us, given this world, now reimagine your commitment. That's the group stuff. Meet with people individually and ask for their commitment. Can I count on you individually? And don't pressure, don't blackmail, just know who's in and who's out. But here's the science behind that. Just like when someone comes on an airplane, you guys all remember these things we used to fly in. After September 11th, when they came in on, I was sitting in the exit aisle, and this flight attendant came up and she's like, ma'am, I need your full attention. If the plane crashes, I need to know that you would be willing to open the door next to you and to aid and assist in the event of an emergency. And I'm thinking, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You're telling me the plane's crashed and I'm still alive and the fire's on the inside, and you're wondering if I'll open up the door next to me? Yeah, of course I will. Like, who wouldn't? Well, one, that's coming from someone high in accountability, who's a total helper, who has a lot of healthcare training. Like, of course, that was my answer. I'm like, why do they have to do that? So I called my brother-in-law, who's really, he was a pilot at the time who trained pilots for Southwest. I'm like, what is this ridiculous new thing? He's like, Sai, you're a social scientist. You know this. If we leave it ambiguous, right? We just go, everybody in the group, I hope you'll all be here. We'll make it as safe as possible, do the right thing, get it, got it, good. Everybody's going to think somebody else will tend to it. Somebody else will take care of it. Just like if you're by the exit row and an emergency happens, you're like, I bet the flight attendant will tell me what to do. Or what we know about the larger the group of people, the more likely an individual will take action. Heroically is rare. That's why it's on the news when it happens, right? So what we need to do, and the first step of accountability is commitment, is we need to meet with people individually and just say, if we had an outbreak right now and we started surging in the ED, you as a nurse in that department, what's your level of commitment? And, how are you feeling? And can I count on you? And if somebody's like, my commitment's low, it's like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think your commitment level is? And it's like a 2. And then I would say, I need to know, I really want you on board. We've looked at these risks. Help me understand, what's your plan to increase your commitment? Is it a skill thing? Do you need to, enhance your skills on, innovation or assisting innovation? Is it, what is it? And it may be like, I have no plans to increase my commitment level. It may be like, I have 2 immune compromised kids at home. I'm a single parent. This is not my time and not my assignment. It's too much for me to commit to. Are okay. We're not here to beat people up. We're here to call them up to greatness. But if there's a real reason they can't commit, now, if they're just like, I am not doing that no, then part of it, I need to look at my part. How have I kept a nurse employed who is that selective in the work he or she will be doing? Oh, that's right. When they didn't want to do these hours, I let them do that. When they didn't want to do these types of patients, I let them do that. When they complained about people coming in with mental health challenges, I put a social worker in so that that nurse would never have to deal with someone who was struggling with some addictions. a lot of this lack of willingness and lack of stepping up from accountables, unless they have a real situation, is revealing to you as a leader what you've allowed. It's like there are some nurses who are just like, not me, not now. And I'm like, you've been a nurse for 20 years. This is, of course, you, of course, now. Like, what is going on? Well, I've enabled them this whole time. So individually, we have to talk about what's your commitment level. And if somebody's like, I'm like a 6, what's your plan to get yourself to a 10? What can you do? What can I do? Because you want to work individually, maybe something that didn't come up in the group. Nobody wants to say, I have an innovative patient. We do one a month. And it's like, well, it could be that we're doing 10 a day. So let's, have ICU come down, or let's have our regional hospital, let's put a plan in place. And that's how you start working, not to enable people, not to coddle them, but to share that accountability on what's our plan. And then you're high committed, you make sure they're highly skilled, and then you start having them reach down for your next committed to say, Janice feels really comfortable in this. She has a lot of experience in this type of environment. So I'm going to pair the two of you. You're going to be working together on this next shift. I'm going to pair the two of you together. And tribally, I want you to see how you can get to be more like Janice in your approach to this. So group, transparent, normalized, neutral, and then individual is that call to greatness. And if somebody has something to accommodate them, but we don't accommodate fear, because fear is false events appearing real. I went through the HIV crisis when I was just first coming out as a social worker and hospital administrator, and we didn't know a lot about that disease. Condition, it's like we didn't know a lot about that. But there were some of us who leaned into it and said, let's learn what we can, protect ourselves because people need service. And there were others that were full of judgmentalism and just said, that's a curse or whatever they believed. And it was that team that we didn't put high accountables and low accountables together because we wanted to focus on the patient. The injury to the patient is to be taken care of by somebody who's scared of them, that was scared to be present to them. So we can't do that to our customers or our patients, but we quickly put together a dream team that then broke the curve. So put high accountables with high accountables, make their lives easy, get people to claim where they are. And if somebody's kind of mid-committed, then have them work with high accountables to convert them if possible. But if somebody's low in commitment, then say, you know what, then it seems like I need you to take a leave, or I have somebody from the ICU that's willing to come down. Can you cover there? And they're like, well, no, because I don't like that shift, and that would be nice. I really want days. I'm working harder than you are at really accommodating what is your fear and potentially based on not keeping your skill set up. So I'm not going to accommodate that right now. I am offering you some solutions, and it seems like you're not taking those up. And so what I can do for you is, according to our policy, put you on leave, or, well, that will be unpaid. Well, you've got vacation, you can use it. I shouldn't have to use my vacation in the pandemic. Absolutely correct. And one way not to lose your vacation is to take this ICU position. That's your choice, and avoid emotional blackmail where people are like, so you're just laying me off without pay. Actually, I'm not laying you off. I've offered you some really opportunity. You're choosing not to. And I don't even know that will be without pay, because it seems like, unemployment's uncontested right now, and that might be an option for you. Well, if I claim unemployment, I have to quit. Yes, right. And what we tend to do is we accommodate fear, which leaves people believing they're the victims and that you need to work harder at their success than they are. And I'm not being insensitive here, right? If somebody has a reasonable accommodation, that my team knows, I am the first to go, let me send you my own personal money to do that. I'm talking about the people who are conditional on a good day in their work, and you've allowed that conditionality. So what I love for a lot of us is this is exposing, one, your bad leadership, but what you've allowed. Tabitha from Iowa is on. What do we say to someone who is fearful and we don't accommodate fear? So what I say to them is I acknowledge the feelings. So I'm hearing fear. Is that what you're feeling? Yes. And I say, and I just want to acknowledge that part of our work, part of courage and bravery is fearfulness, right? We all are going to feel some of that, but doing this anyway. And so I really want to manage the energy and talk about how we could um, do this, even if you're feeling fearful, but not incurring the risk at hand. So, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of contracting COVID. Okay, so let's talk about that. We have people come in the emergency room with a lot of things you would not want to contract. And how do we protect ourselves? You know, PPE. Do we have the appropriate PPE? We protect ourselves with education. We protect ourselves with changing our approach. We protect ourselves with teamwork instead of, you know, 8 of us going in and out. We do communication chains where I can go this far and then you can take it the next step and then you give that to the person in the room, and you know they can even hold up signs to ask, like, how can we accommodate that? But we can't just say you're scared, game over. Like, we got to say, you're scared. Let's get specific because fear is false events appearing real sometimes. How can we at least get that risk manageable, and how can we get you moving forward? And so those are the things that I talk to people about. I don't talk them out of their feelings, that's their experience. I talk to them about how they can do what's required with those feelings. Um, you know, in healthcare, like there are times we are super sad. There are times I'm doing therapy with you and my own damn heart's broken, but we know that, you know, we got to do things sad. We got to do things scared. We've got to do things, you know, for me, which is why I'm not a nurse or a doctor, like we got to do things like not paying attention to our gag reflex. It's like, you know, wow, did not want to see that happening, right? So it's like, calling people up to greatness isn't about you asking them to put themselves at risk. That's the low accountable game where they go, I do it anyway, and then they sabotage and then they get hurt. It is about you calling people up to greatness and helping them achieve something they never dreamt they were capable of, and finding out they can do hard things. And with that knowledge, help them be braver for the next situation and the next situation. So, um, I will do the podcast. I've got some more questions that got sent in. Load up your questions. I'm going to do some on the podcast. So I think I answered that one. People are saying, yes, I needed this. Good, good, good. Okay, you guys, notice your anxiety as now another change is coming for many. We're talking about going back out in the world again. Really don't lose what you've gained here. So many times we get a glimpse over the holidays, which is why we set our New Year's resolution, right? Regardless of your own spiritual perspectives or religions that you may practice, you know, there's a lot of holidays that happen in that November, December time period. We get time off. We set these big intentions, and then we just watch them get blown away by busyness and other people setting our agendas and us not setting our boundaries, us not being brave, us not being courageous. And so, as you notice your anxiety, notice that anxiety is there probably for a reason, that you want to not give up some of the things you've realized or gained, and have the courage to get conscious, write down what you've learned. I've asked you what this has revealed to you, what you've become grateful for. Like, take that and really get conscious and intentional to the point it can be something really little, like, even though it felt good, for instance, to get my nails manicured on a every week basis, I really resented the couple of hours, you know, I would be in there. And it's like the little things. I'm like, I don't want to go back to, you know, for some of you who got gray, I was pre-gray. If you made it this far, I'm telling you what, get a headband. If you've thought about it, go the rest of the way and let your natural self come through. It's like, notice what it can be small like that. Large for me is like, I've noticed what a homebody I am, and how I thought to be intimate with all of you and really be available and there for you, I needed to be out in front of you, hugging you and loving you guys up. And what I realized is I spend about 12 hours to get to you for like an hour, where if we can make this intimate and get some group coaching going and get our smaller our venues, and that I can get, like up close and personal. But then those 12 hours are my self-care, which leads to more inspiration and innovation, which leads to being more prolific on the courses I can take, which leads to like, I don't have to wait for learning and development to bring me in. You guys can access it directly. You can use your own, team budget to say, we're going to do this for our staff. Like, it's really, for me, I'm really looking at, if you would have asked me, do you love travel? I'm like, absolutely, I love travel. But I'm so good at loving what is that I'm like, how do I know I love it? Because I do it, so I choose to love it. And now I'm kind of like, I love being at home and I love being online. I love this whole thing. I've connected more with people now than ever, although I still have a long list of people I go, oh, I got to reach out to them. I've been pretty busy supporting some of our healthcare workers. So we are out of time. Please send me any questions. You can do it info@Cy Wakeman, INFO@Cy Wakeman. You can do it here. We repurpose these things. We record them. Help me share. If you guys love this stuff, I will keep doing it once a week and, start asking you about what it's like as we go back. And I'm glad to do that. So I don't know my schedule next week, but we'll send out what day it is. And I love you guys. Do not go back to the normal that not even you loved. So go back to what you loved, but not what you didn't love. Put your stake in the ground. We are the leaders. We have discovered some things. We can design what this likes going forward. So we have a better world, a better workplace, a better home place. We can move through the world more evolved, more skillful, more effortlessly, more with more wisdom and more love. So be good to each other. Next week,